This is a production of Cornell University.
It's great to be here. Thank you for coming out on this snowy night. In New Jersey, I think a state of, where I grew up, a state of emergency would have been declared hours ago. So this is very exciting. I'm going to open with a very short piece called The Night in Question. And it's going to ask you to adjust your attention because if you don't, it's going to be over before you know it. So it's a single paragraph. And it was my first published poem. I didn't think of it as a poem when I wrote it, but that's how it was seen. The Night in Question. The rising seas, the bulldog Dean, nothing bothered me tonight. My mother's mind shifting like water. My murderous student, Mr. Greasy, son of Unabomber, far away. Yea, I walked toward the beach. I could not see, but I might have been given a fresh brain, inspired and outwardly turned. And as soon as I spoke those words to the deep, I swear creatures started coming toward me. Squirrels, raccoons, deer, footfalls on fallen leaves. I was like someone out of a freaking folk tale who knew not death or the turned-up stomach, but who moved through the night with the lightest tread, changing it with the benevolence of his passing. Oh, I'm exaggerating for effect now. I'll admit it. Real contentment has none of that extremity or loopiness. No sign of endings or of the long black coat creeping out from behind a bush. What was I telling you? It was something like this. The world was made exactly for us, and we'd never have to leave it. I'm going to move on to something from Famous Builder. Actually, it was the opening section from Famous Builder, which has been out in the world for some years now. And all you need to know is that this section, or these two sections, are called Junta, and it's more or less a meditation on naming. Junta. 1. Lisicky. What? I try to project my name toward the ridged roof of my mouth. I try to keep my jaw loose, my eyes animated, secure. I think Smith, Stevens, Bishop. Lisicky, I say again. Paul Lisicky. How do you spell that? I note the hushed quality of the bank teller's voice, the tender, quizzical lift of her penciled-in brow. She leans in closer to me, palms flattened against the counter, as if I've just told her my condition is terminal. 2. In 1970, at the Bret Harte School in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, a substitute teacher with flame-bright hair and an exhausted, gullible demeanor walked into her assigned fifth-grade classroom and dropped a violet, bullet-shaped purse on the desk. It took but 2 minutes for us to size her up. She took out a crease sheet from its blue satin lining, called out Samuel Agresta, and after a pause, Barry Lem raised his hand. Then Allegra Asher, who was answered instantly by Marguerite Keating, and Brian Boguslaw by Wendell Waddies. In no time at all, others joined in, as steely and determined as plainclothes soldiers walking through the markets of a corrupt village. I was Kevin Navins. I huddled over my desk, surprised by the ease with which my hand moved across the paper, my brain supplying me with ready answers to the multiplication tables. I hadn't so much taken on the characteristics of the real Kevin, who cooled his agitated face against the window pane, longing to be anywhere but in this world of paste jars, milk tickets, and old oranges souring the depths of desks, but rather of someone tranquil and collected, content to live in his skin. When I glanced up at the blonde Ewart Greet, who was Paul Lisicky for the morning, I was surprised to see his gray-green eyes fixed to the assignment. He didn't worry that he'd just recovered from another strep throat and missed the last 2 weeks of school, nor did he fret about the lunchtime game in which he'd inevitably be struck in the face with a heavy white ball. His forehead pinked with vitality, good cheer. But it didn't stop there. 2 hours later, after we'd come in from the snowy blacktop, and Mrs. Ballatin had been summoned by the principal's office to correct the inaccuracies on her roll sheet, she called out our names again. Soon, Kevin Navins was Carol Campelia, Mona Chase was Damien Osisic, David Monshaw, Marguerite Keating, until everyone had so many identities, no one knew who anyone was for sure. Mrs. Ballatin massaged the freckled bridge of her nose between her forefinger and thumb. She glared and let out a raspy laugh. You kids. She wagged her head back and forth, ripped the roll sheet in half, and tossed it into the wastebasket. That day, I walked home from the bus stop with a brisk step, the bottoms of my sneakers skating across black ice. Later, I'd come down with another sore throat, but at that moment I could have been anything, the spaniel tearing through the hollies, the water sparkling in his deep blue bowl. I'm going to move on to some brand new work, work that's been written in the last 6 months. And it's from a book that I'm tentatively calling Unbuilt Projects. And some of these pieces, they're all short prose pieces. Some of them are being published as nonfiction. Some of them are being published as fiction. Some of them are being published as poems. And I'm just letting the editors of various magazines make those decisions. So I like this. I like the sense of subversion around genre. I'm having a blast writing this book. This first section is a bit of a triptych. It's called This is the Day. And when I say triptych, it means it has 3 short parts, and I'm going to read them for you. This is the day. The first section is called How's Florida? And life, for one shining moment in the summer at the shore house, was almost golden. But not before the forgetting, the big red forgetting machine, not exactly asked for, but certainly willing to get the job done. And what might you drop down its spout? Think 1 suicide, 1 car crash, 2 violent deaths, 1 crazy cousin, miscarriage 1, miscarriage 2, miscarriage 3, 1 lecherous boss. Sweet Jesus, let's spare one another the facts. Her life, my life. This is meant to be the story of all lives, though I'm talking about one in particular. The point is, the damn thing made it possible for my mother to live. And now I'm standing in its spray, using whatever it took in to mulch my garden. See how the plants grow and die a little. But we've all heard this story before, says the moss beneath the rock. If you're interested in the march of time or in how things morph and grow, why not consider evolution? Evolution? The march of time? Well then. On an otherwise unremarkable morning in Florida, my mother walks to her dining room table where I've been sitting, stops, beams at me, and says, "You almost feel like my son." "But I am your son," I answer, laughing warily, as if in response to a punchline that's a little off. "Then you must be my twin," she says. And when I think, but Paul's been dead for 60 years, she asks whether I went to school with him. And back and forth goes the Q&A, as calm could be, until we're both weary of the lesson. And just when I think I've pulled her back by the rope of my talk to a place we thought familiar, she asks, "Who are your brothers and sisters?" But she isn't satisfied with the 2 grown men's names I say aloud. "Hun," she says to my father, "Hun." My father, who's half looking at the electric bill, half listening to the portable TV on the countertop. "Hun, Paul's our son." And the slightest look of hurt in his eyes suggests that he's been the one who's been exposed. He's been the one in the wrong. And she keeps laughing, shy, and a little pleased to be at the center of things. I'm sorry, she says. I'm so, so sorry. You're my sweetheart. I'm 45 years old, I almost say, and you're just being born. 3 days later, after I was no longer frozen or more interested than broken, I was sorry too, not just for what you're thinking, but for the words I whispered as I was falling asleep that night. She's leaving us. She likes someone better than us. And here I thought we meant everything. She wants to play with the monkeys. Holy, 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 sing the monkeys. Blessed is she who comes in the name of the Lord. So the impulse that helps you live ends up doing you in. That's it in a nutshell, right? That's what I'm supposed to learn? Hosanna in the highest. And how's Florida, says my friend Luis, though he's not exactly asking about a travel destination. And I don't have it in me to tell him that she wasn't on my mind. 2. Paul all gone. No cry, no moan, easy as a crown rolling out onto a bed of blankets. That's the story I've made of my mother's story. I mean, her version of the time her twin fell out of the car. And what did her father say to the empty space on the seat when he finally looked over his shoulder? Where's Paul? Paul all gone, said my mother, as if that were the funniest thing, though she couldn't have known it was funny until she heard her father tell it, and she saved the story by making someone laugh. Paul, it should be noted, was okay, at least for then. My grandfather turned the car around, stopped, and scooped him up in his arms. Though much later, Paul wasn't. Okay, I mean. And you probably know that his ending had something to do with a car. The way my mother told it, the first incident didn't prefigure the next. She kept the two stories apart. That way, she could still make you laugh and come out winning. But even the 5-year-old me couldn't take out the bad story from the good. And what of the naughty gleam turned to me this morning? Her memory long asleep, a lost child in the woods beside the road. Paul all gone, I almost say for her, but her face says it instead. My mother, she still has it in her to be funny. And the last one is a phone call with my father. Maybe that's the way to go, my father says. All at once you're flat on your back and speechless, listening to your upstairs neighbor go on. What exactly did you say to her? I say. He pauses as if he's trying to ground himself before acting it out as a storyteller would. I said, listen, Ethel, you're going to see your mother, your father, and your husband soon. Your older sister and the cat you used to feed. Everyone you ever knew and missed. And she gripped my hand as hard as she could and looked me straight in the eye. And that was that. And wouldn't you know it, that's when the stupid ambulance pulls up. And you're sure she wanted to see these people? What if she couldn't stand her mother? Or what if she's Jewish? But I should be quiet already. The truth is, I'm wondering where he's gone. Where's the father who used to insist that when you're dead, even as he took us week after week to church? What's religion have to do with it? I'm just saying I think it's important that what you say in that kind of situation be exactly right. Not everyone believes in a heaven. Okay, he says with a little laugh, Mr. You have all the answers. Who do you want to see? And that stops me. Not because I can't begin to form the words I'd want to make, and not because I'm stumped. This face and that face come flying toward me like snow, but because she's right there with him in the next room, waiting for him to bring her a cup of something warm. But it isn't my father my mother wants, not the man she's lived with 51 years, but Lulu or Bernice or whatever new name she'll give him tonight. And I'd be lying to you if my father and I didn't shake our heads and laugh some about this, especially on a good day, when her neck isn't hurting, or when she isn't talking too much about her mother and how she'd just be able to see her if she just had the energy to walk to the other side of the road. Is that how we want to go, with most of our memory scraped? Think of how it was to live just seconds after we entered the world. Our senses so raw, they couldn't get enough of things. This is the day the Lord has made. Now I wonder if I'd recognize her if I saw her again. I mean the old mother. Suppose I saw her walking down the highway with suitcase in hand. Would she even stop to talk if I said hello? Maybe we all made her up, that lady who shared our house and put on red lipstick and told us she was proud of us. Aside from her, my father says finally, quiet now, as if trying to make things simpler. Sometime before the first life became the next life, though there were never really two lives, even as we talk about them like that, my mother walked up to him with wonder and alarm in her eyes. "What is it, hon?" he said, startled, without the old impatience we'd grown so used to. "You look funny." And it was true. Her green eyes looked clearer than they'd looked in weeks. Without even waiting for her reply, he knew, she knew, there was a stranger in her kitchen. And though she might have said, "Get out of my house," she reached for his hand and held it. They stood like that for a while, leaning into the refrigerator, nodding as she pressed that hand to her side. And though I know not the details, and know not the new name she called him, I picture my father leading my mother down the hall past the place where the piano used to be. And the story of whatever happened inside the bedroom carried them together for a long, long time, even after things got worse, even after my mother started telling people in the lobby of her building with an exhilarated hush, "A man has moved into our apartment and I think I really like him." 51 years of arguments gone like that. And Jesus appeared before him with his shining body. "Put your hand into my side if you believe." The next one is for my students, my wonderful Cornell students, and anyone who's ever taken a writing workshop, anyone who's ever led a writing workshop, etc., etc. It's called "The Boy and His Mother Are Stuck." And the printed version is going to have an exclamation point after the title. "The Boy and His Mother Are Stuck." If I'd been the kind of 7-year-old who turned up in stories, I might have said to her, "Listen, after we get out of this, we'll get ourselves to a good cafeteria, order 2 tapiocas with cherries on top, and laugh about the idiots we made of ourselves." Instead, I rested my head on the pretend steering wheel beside her real steering wheel and wept. I wept and I wept, careful to match my sobs to hers, careful not to outpace her in misery. She didn't lift her head, and I didn't lift my head. Our eyes burned in fury, in frustration. If you'd read about us in a story, you might not have seen yourself reflected in us. You might have said, "That woman needs some pluck, a little sass. What is she, some kind of actress? A victim? And that son of hers? If you ask me, I see the inklings of a sissy." But this wasn't any story. We were stuck in the snow, in the woods, on a one-way lane many years ago when the world was getting darker. The sky was getting darker. We'd made some wrong turns. The empty lot we were looking for wasn't anywhere in sight, just like the big house we'd hoped to build on it was only a picture in our heads. One life was coming to an end, a baby on the way any minute. Boy, girl, my mother had wanted a girl. She'd made that clear to us. And as if to prove to us the old house was no longer adequate, The windows were leaking air, and a smell of rotten plants wafted from the pond in the backyard. Would I miss the old house? Not if she didn't. Just yesterday, when we were all a little calmer and safer, my younger brother put his palms on the oven of her and murmured, "Duck, duck, I want a duck." As if words alone could make the thing inside her grow feathers. "Show me the joy in childhood," demanded the writing teacher, sometime between that time and where we are now. And he squeezed his fist on the tabletop and said what he had to say, as if he were trying to convince himself of the truest thing. And he looked at me with wise, demented eye, as if he wanted to punch the look off my face. And all I can say today is, "Joy, visit me now." And him. But that wasn't the life inside the car. Inside the car, my mother turned the wheel to the left, gunned the accelerator, and turned. She tried it again. Left, right, and left again. Little by little, we sank in it and slid. We edged forward. The road was behind us now, on top of us, higher than our heads. And the harder she turned, the darker went our wishes. We were inside the dream of it now, the rash, irrepressible dream. We were already on the way, and it wasn't as awful as you'd think. And need I say that the trees reared like deer, ready to take us in? And need I say that we were closer to bliss than anything we'd ever known? "Give me the strength," my mother whispered, and the grip in her voice was so tight that I knew the duck, if it chose to, wanted to, could fly out the open space between her legs. And it wouldn't be the friendly duck my brother wanted. No, it wouldn't be the duck that would save us, but it would fly round and round our heads, knocking the windshield with its beak, looking for a way out. And just when I was certain our separate skins had become one, my mind shifted and sprung, even though it took me years to give it words. "You are you, and I am me." What? Though no one actually said this. "You are you. I don't have to feel this." And I fell through the trap of the story with, what? A duck in my arms, sweet duck of the lightest weight, pressing her neck to my neck. And if I stayed still long enough and breathed, tuning myself to her pulse, I knew she'd take me up with her and let me go when it was time. I was thinking on that a little while when the tow truck came. A tiny black man stepped through a hole in the pines and without much trouble at all pulled the car out of the snow with a heavy clinking chain that left a grease mark on the white. I stood behind the car after it was over, rubbing the bumper as if to cure it. And if only that were the end and the story didn't insist on telling itself again. And I'm going to finish with a very, very short piece. Think about this one as a kind of coda. It's called The Didache, which borrows its title from a lost early Christian text that was rediscovered in the 19th century. The Didache is in large part a series of instructions having to do with rituals. So that's all you need to know, the Didache. Thanks so much for your attention. It's great to see you, see your faces. What were you like the last time I saw you whole? I know nothing is as simple as whole versus broken, such as what we were once told about the bread of God. But what did you have on? The blouse with the anchor on the front? Which watch? And had you colored your hair with the summer ash you'd sworn by for so long? Maybe it was the day you stood at the kitchen counter and you made me a sandwich and I let you do it, even though I was a guest in your house and I was perfectly capable of making my own. I think now about how proud you were to put it together, as if it took an effort you used to take for granted. The sliced ham atop the 2 slices of white bread, the Miracle Whip, the torn wet lettuce leaf, the kind of sandwich we don't even eat anymore, though you put it in my lunch bag for years. It's funny how we end up where we do. There you are in the state whose name you wouldn't even consider without saying too hot or hurricanes. And I was practically a business major? Good God. Leave it to you to figure out at the last minute that I was only trying to win you, though I couldn't yet see it for myself. And you said, writing, and thereby saved me. I've never told you that. It's fashionable to say that words, among other things, fail us. And mostly I think that's true. But what would I be if I couldn't set this down? As the broken bread was scattered on the hillsides, and so was gathered and made one, so may the many of you be gathered and find favor with one another. And even if wholeness is ridiculous to expect at this late stage of the story, well, at least you're around, says the business major who never got to be. Take, eat, says the mother, given up and broken, and pushes the sandwich into the lunch bag and sends me on my way. Thank you all.